our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Monmouth in the flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And I'm the essence of ingestion, a Taurus, Mike.
I'm Colton.
And it's Gill.
And we are back for another one where we're all done. I was going to say we're all done October, but it seems off. It seems like October just happened and I'm about to go into December, which is crazy.
Really? Because it feels like October was 3 months ago.
Yeah, I'm with Mike.
Oh,
it definitely
geez.
feels like almost December to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my time's just off or something.
We're just depressed.
Yeah, maybe.
That's true. Seasonal depression is already kicking our ass.
And
And
Halloween's
it's only...
over.
Yeah.
There's nothing to live for no more.
But we are back. Let's start with what we have been consuming. What have we been watching? What have we been reading? What have we been listening to? All that good stuff. Jill, why don't you start us off this time?
All right. Yeah, apart from the regular trash that I consume on TLC, I haven't been watching much lately. Just slogging my way through that seasonal depression. But I did go see Thanksgiving in theater, and I was really pleasantly surprised by it. I was intrigued by the idea of it, and I actually asked these guys what they thought of it before I went, just to make sure it was a good move. And they said I should definitely watch it. So I did. I'm so happy I did, because it will now be on my rotation every Thanksgiving. I think it's a new holiday classic slasher. I love the gore. I love the camp, and it's just chef's kiss. So really love that one. For reading, I read the new Paris Hilton memoir, and I liked it. It wasn't as powerful as Britney's memoir, and I think that's partly because Paris really leaned into this embracing being like a workaholic and using that to deal with her trauma, which, is kind of bad taste in, society when poor people or the working class people are going to read your book. But she used all that to like deal with her trauma, and there was like a stint about NFTs that like really made me want to gag. So overall, it was interesting. Apart from all that stuff, it was interesting to read her struggles about the troubled teen industry. And she also has a documentary on YouTube about it, which is pretty good. I also finished Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas, and it was the penultimate book in the Throne of Glass series. I thought I was going to hate this book because it was left on such a cliffhanger on the book before this. And this is a giant-ass book. This is like a 1,000-page book. And it's all about a character who I didn't really care for, but it ended up possibly being my favorite book in the series, and I really loved it. So yeah, if you're into fantasy, please pick up the Throne of Glass series. It won't disappoint. And
is that series over?
Yeah, it's over.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I was waiting for a new book to come out. I'm like, how come she hasn't put out another one yet?
Yeah, I think she did mention it's over, but she might add like other points of views and stuff into there. So.
Yes, the usual publishing.
Yeah, exactly. But
throw some sawdust down and tell the whole book again from another character's point of view.
Exactly. And all of her universes, her whole universe is like every book you can kind of tie it together a little bit. Like they exist in kind of the same universe, but very, very apart from each other. So there's lots of like little Easter eggs, and that's partly why I enjoy her writing. But now I'm on the very last book in the series, which is called Kingdom of Ash, and it's a giant ass book, another like 1,000-page book. So I'm reading that and Iron Flame, so it's gonna be a lot for me. And I also read And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie.
Oh, classic.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Classic, fun mystery book.
I mean, it was like literally the blueprint.
Yeah,
like,
it really
not
is.
only mysteries, like slashers. Like, I think every slasher movie pretty much cribbed.
Yeah, like the whole house, like haunted house feeling, and people are just dropping like flies. Absolutely, that's a great point. And then on the music side of things, I went to an In This Moment and Ice Nine Kills show this weekend, and it was my first time seeing In This Moment live, and the show was really well done. It's really refreshing to see a female-fronted metal band doing something different, and I love the softness, the femininity of it all, and how theatrical it was. And it was my second time seeing Ice Nine Kills, not the third time, which Colton thinks
or the fourth or fifth time, like I thought it
was. He's just jealous, but anyways, they killed it as always.
I just feel like you're just always reposting the pictures from the concert on Instagram or something. Then I don't know what I've been seeing.
I've been going to a lot of shows, so that's probably what you're seeing, and you're like, this bitch always doing something. But since you got so much to say, Colton, tell us what you've been consuming.
Well, I haven't seen any performances or shows. I haven't been reading anything, but I have been, watching TV again. I watched a couple episodes of The Curse, the new Nathan Fielder show that stars Emma Stone on Showtime. I think it's all right. It's not great. It's not like The Rehearsal, which I thought was basically just like masterful, like really awkward comedy. Like the horror from that show kind of just teeters on like how awkward and how basically cringe-inducing so much of the show is. Where this feels a little bit of a step down. I think it definitely has some interesting concepts, but I'm still kind of waiting for it to hit its stride after 2 episodes, and I see kind of like the online kind of talk around the show kind of souring a little bit already. Like people are kind of like over it. I don't know if any of you checked it out. Have you seen that yet, Rowan? The Curse?
No, I've seen a lot about it. I've got it on my list to check out.
Yeah, it has like its moments for sure throughout the first 2 episodes, but it's like I said, it's definitely a step down overall. As Gill mentioned, I went to see Thanksgiving. Rowan and I both checked it out, did a now slang on it, so you can listen to that to get our full thoughts. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by it overall as well. I've checked out a few different things. I saw the new David Fincher movie on Netflix, The Killer. It's been a couple of weeks since I've seen it now, so I don't remember absolutely everything about it, but I still really like how clinical and precise David Fincher's filmmaking is, and how he doesn't like shy away from grim subject matter. I think in particular, this one is like really interesting to watch how he directs your eye on the screen, which maybe might be saying like, well, if you're thinking about that while watching the movie, it's probably kind of boring. But in the beginning of the movie, it's intentionally boring because the main character is bored. He's on a job as a hitman, having to sit there and look out a window for days on end. So it's like, it's kind of intentionally boring for probably the first 10 to 15 minutes. And throughout that section, there's a lot of use of narration, which I found it to be a little corny. And a lot of like what he was saying, I can see that these like insecure, incel, toxic masculine guys are probably going to grab onto it and probably like misconstrue what it was saying throughout the movie. Because the movie kind of like, yeah, just like have jotted down Fight Club, American Psycho, or more recently Joker, where it's like, these movies I think are a little bit self-aware of it, but obviously the audiences aren't always aware of what it's saying or how the movie or sometimes is doing it like tongue in cheek. So it was kind of like, as I was watching it, I was like, I like this. I think it's kind of funny. But I think some people are going to get the wrong impression from it. Regardless, I did still enjoy watching it. I thought Michael Fassbender was really good, and I haven't seen him in a lot lately, so it was nice to see him back after a couple of years away. Another thing I saw that I really liked was The Holdovers. This is Alexander Payne's new movie, and I think the last thing he did was Downsizing with Matt Damon. That was just a god-awful movie. So I wasn't looking forward to seeing this at all. I actually skipped it at TIFF because I was like, the last time I saw an Alexander Payne movie at TIFF, it was Downsizing. And I remember like I regretted my life like so much when I was watching that. But this movie was considerably like way better. It feels like a movie that really isn't made nowadays. It's set over Christmas break, and it's just a very like small story about essentially like a teacher who's kind of like not really into his job anymore, being forced to stay with the holdover students at a boarding school over Christmas break, the 4 or 5 delinquent students. It's very like small scale, just kind of simmering tensions, comedy, drama. It's a very like a small scale movie that doesn't really, like I said, doesn't really get made anymore. And it's even like aesthetically, it looks like something from like the 70s or 80s, like very authentically so, like lots of, I don't know, stylistic trappings that you see nowadays with all the film grain and, the cigarette burns and the color grading and whatnot, but it very much looks like from another time. Like that, I really appreciated it, and I thought it was just basically just a feel-good movie overall, like just a nice movie, which is just kind of funny for me to be talking about on a horror podcast. But when I left it, I was like, oh, that was nice. I enjoyed that. It was definitely worth a watch. The last thing I'll probably mention is very much a completely different movie from that, and that's Saltburn. I just saw it yesterday or the day before. I was talking to the crew before we started recording that I saw it in basically a completely private screening. It was just 4:00 in the afternoon. It was only me all by myself. And this movie is quite a wild watch. It's written and directed by Emerald Fennell, who did Promising Young Woman a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of you have seen that.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you think of it, Rowan? Promising Young Woman, I'm curious.
I'm actually a really big fan of that. I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay, yeah, I think she kind of, like, doesn't have that, the curse of, like, the second movie with this. I really enjoyed it. It feels like a modern retelling of kind of, like, The Talented Mr. Ripley, but a little bit more debaucherous than that. I thought the technicals were all completely excellent. It's in the normal kind of... well, not normal, but more common 4:3 aspect ratio that's kind of coming back nowadays, you know, the square Academy ratio that I thought was really well done for, like, framing the movie. Like, it feels a lot more intimate at times when obviously these characters are forced to share the frame with one another, or also, like, when you're shooting such, you know, like, opulence or party scenes or, you know, anything like this, it's interesting to see how they can shoot it in a way that still conveys the scale, but you're cutting off, like, so much of the frame. I really enjoyed how it was shot. I thought the acting overall was excellent. Jacob Elordi, I don't really know him from anything, really. Like, he's in Euphoria, apparently.
Yes, God, he's like the villainous Euphoria character.
Oh, is he? Okay,
he's like the hot guy, right? That Cassie's with, who's supposed to be Rhysand in A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Probably, yes. And he also played the superior Elvis in Priscilla.
Okay, so basically what I was going to say is I only know him from Priscilla, which I thought he was great in as Elvis, and I agree he was better than Austin Butler and kind of sold it a little better in my opinion. So seeing him in this movie, I was like, all right, this guy's going to be a star. He's excellent. Like, in this movie, he's magnanimous. You understand how, like, Barry Keoghan's character can just kind of fall in love with that character, but also kind of like the power and the swagger he has. But better than him in this movie is Barry Keoghan, who is just this, like, weird little gremlin of a character. I don't really know how to describe him, but I absolutely love that actor. I think he has such a unique look to him, and he just sells every single role he's in. Like, somehow he can literally be, like, the weirdest, socially awkward, like, grossest character, and then a couple scenes later, he can completely, like, sell... like, oh, everybody, like, wants to be him and everyone loves him and everyone wants to fuck him, like, a couple scenes later. And it's like, how the hell does this guy sell both aspects of this character? And yeah, it's just a really weird movie. I don't want to get into it because it'll spoil things, but I went in completely blind, and there were moments in the movie where I was like, I'm happy I'm watching this by myself because this is some degenerate shit, but also, like, I was kind of, like, cackling at times because it was so messed up, like, what was happening. If you like really fucked up movies, I would say go check it out at least. I think it does get pretty messy, as movies that are kind of, like, wild usually do. But I enjoyed it overall. I thought it was definitely worth watching. Outside of that, I saw some other things. I don't want to talk about it because they weren't very good. So I'll just ask Rowan, what have you been watching and consuming?
I did a lot of rewatches and stuff. I'm not even going to get into that because I did watch quite a bit of stuff. I finally got a chance to see Priscilla, and I really enjoyed that.
So good.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. My kind of speed. I mean, obviously... I'm a Sofia Coppola stan, so I'll just, soak in everything she wants to give me. And then my killer story is I was at work and we were like, hey, the killer's out. We should watch that tonight. And we were like, yeah, sure. So I got to, our common area with our TV, and the guy that was supposed to put it on forgot that that's what we were supposed to watch and had just turned on Mafia Mama or whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah, Mafia Mommy or whatever it is. Yeah.
And I didn't really know what was going on, but you know what? I was like, I'm not going to be rude, so I'll just, like, if this is what he wants to watch instead of the killer, we'll watch that.
I hope you were just sitting there wondering when Michael Fassbender was going to come into the movie.
So, yeah, I ended up watching that and, like, oh, God, it was not good. And it was just so weird. And it was really funny because when it was all done, he looked at me, he's like, you didn't enjoy that, did you? And I was like, no. And he's like, yeah, I didn't realize till like 3/4 of the way in that we said we were going to watch The Killer, but he was like, I figured I just had to go to the end. So he was like, I just kept it on. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's okay.
That's so cunty.
You know, like Colton, I did get a chance to watch The Killer. I really enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was pretty meticulously made. And I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. There were so many remnants of like American Psycho and Fight Club. And yeah, it definitely kind of gave me that incel vibe. But, you know, I was feeling Fincher's just so good that you got to kind of give him a pass on all that stuff.
Yeah, it's also with that movie, it's just like, once again, the narration that is very much the incel.
Yeah.
It's like the movie winds up commenting on that / the guy very much thinks he's a very different person based on the narration and then like what you're watching. It's like almost like watching one of those people think that they're really put together and excellent, but in reality, like when you're watching it, they're just like falling apart, which I thought was interesting, you know?
I got a chance to check out the Marvels, and I thought it was fine. It was good. I mean, it was kind of, I said it was kind of refreshing. Like, it's not very long. It's pretty inconsequential to any big picture stuff. It's just kind of its own thing. And, you know, lots of Beastie Boys on the soundtrack, so I was into that. I was a really big fan of...
That was Nia DaCosta did that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
I think he was just about to shit all over her, but
yeah.
You know.
I mean, it is what it is. I kind of feel like maybe she was the one that, you know, gave it the like Beastie Boys, like old school hip hop vibe. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, because if you watched the Miss Marvel show, pretty much the whole soundtrack of Miss Marvel was like 80s and 90s hip hop. So I think it carried over there. But I was a big fan of Miss Marvel show, and I really like that actress, and like she just holds the movie together. Brie Larson's just hanging in there by a fingernail. Like, you can tell she doesn't want to be there. You can kind of tell Marvel doesn't want her to be there. And it's just like, they just need to give these reins over to this actress playing Miss Marvel and just let her kind of go. Because
I feel like everybody in Marvel movies now, including the directors and actors, just don't want to be there, and they're just doing it for a paycheck.
100%, and then audiences don't want to be there either.
Yeah.
That's why it's, you know,
and they're doing it because they've invested so much of their time and lives and, you know, mental fortitude into consuming all this media for the last 15 years or whatever.
We're tired.
Yeah, you just gotta keep it going.
We're so tired.
I watched No Holds Barred, which was Hulk Hogan's first starring performance.
Here we fucking go.
From 1989, and it was awesome. It was like super awesome. It's like super cheesy. His tagline in it is just rip 'em. So like every time he's gonna beat up a guy, he just like does this cool hand signal and goes rip 'em. And then he just like suplexes guys in the limousines. And Tiny Lester is like the villain. I don't know anything about wrestling, but apparently you know, friends of the podcast, Willow and Trevor, told me that Tiny Lester did do a stint in WWE or WWF at the time, and he was a wrestler named Zeus, and he is also in this movie as Zeus. So if you like really cheesy, like this was made by WWF in the 80s, it's super funny, and there's a lot of like kind of like character actors in this that, you know, are just in everything in the 80s and 90s. I watched The Expendables 3 because I'm still going through.
You're such a dirtbag.
The Expendables 3. That one was rough, guys. It was rough. The Expendables 3, I believe, is just where this... I'm not looking forward to 4, because I can tell 3, just like everyone, kind of like the Marvel movies, everyone just wants to not be doing this. And there's just like, it was really bad. Like, they added all this like young blood in it. Glenn Powell's in this one.
Oh.
Like Ronda, what's her name? Like Ronda Rousey or
Rousey.
Rousey. She's terrible. Like really bad, and it's just they added like all these.
It might have something to do with her being a TERF too, but anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it's The Expendables 3. I'm sitting here like trying to make an excuse for The Expendables 3. One thing I watched that was kind of interesting because I didn't really expect a lot from it was I watched a documentary. It was DMX, Don't Try to Understand. HBO and The Ringer did put this out in 2021. And it's actually really interesting just because it's not like any other music documentary I've ever seen. You see shots of him kind of performing in clubs, but there's no like, this isn't about him performing or like his music. They shot this when he had just got out of jail, and it's like kind of just about like DMX's like day-to-day life, like as a father and just like his addiction struggles. But what makes it super interesting is when they made this, they didn't know that he was gonna die when they were making this. So this was actually the last thing he ever did. I will say, like, I made it to the end and like I was useless. I was like bawling my eye. Like,
oh my god,
it's really like, it's just crazy because I think the ending was obviously supposed to be like kind of uplifting. It's like DMX singing like one of his favorite like soul songs from the 60s. He's like singing to his kids and they're like at this family function, and then literally like a couple weeks later he died, and it was just like really heartbreaking. But it's really interesting because it's very chaotic. Like, I think a lot of people might be turned off by it because there's just a lot going on. Like, narratively for a documentary, it's all over the place, but I think it was really fitting just for how chaotic his life was as an addict, and it's just kind of all over the place. He's very unreliable, so, you know, they're shooting stuff and they can't get a hold of him for weeks on end, and, you know, he reappears in rehab or something, and it was just super interesting. So highly suggest it's on HBO. I saw Gemini Man because I'm a piece of trash like that. Basically, just the last couple days I've been like going through kind of my Netflix watch list of just like random action stuff. Yeah, Gemini Man's not good, guys. Don't watch it.
Wow.
What do you think of the visual effects nowadays? Because when I watched that a few years ago, I thought it actually was done pretty well. Does it still hold up, or does it look?
No, it doesn't.
No.
No.
All right.
I mean, it's probably better than most, like, what it could have been, I guess.
But you didn't believe it was a young Will Smith running around with old Will Smith, did you?
It looked like a cutscene to a video game. Like,
all right.
So they just still haven't kind of perfected that. I saw Pain Hustlers. Finally, that was on my watch list. The newer, I guess, came out like couple weeks ago. Chris Evans and Emily Blunt movie. It was fine. It was like mediocre. I feel like they've made like a bunch of documentaries and a TV show. Like, this is like a hot topic now. It's about like the opioid crisis. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And it's fine. Like, it's just kind of fine. There's a lot of great performances in it, but it's just the story's not really all there. The last couple things I'll talk about, I watched 2 documentaries. People on my Letterboxd probably like, this guy's diving deep. He's gonna join a cult. So I watched Escaping Twin Flames, and then I watched the Amazon version. Escaping Twin Flames was Netflix, but Amazon put one out called Desperately Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flames Universe, and I highly suggest everyone to watch these. It is super fascinating. It's a cult that is like ongoing. It exists now.
What is the cult's purpose? Because I never heard of this before you started logging them /messaging our
Neither
group
did
chat.
I.
I don't know what it is.
And it's amazing because I don't know how people follow like the leader of it, because he's like a 20-something-year-old dirtbag that looks like hippie Jesus. Like, it's ridiculous. And he's an asshole. He's like that Ty Lopez guy from YouTube.
Oh, like, Lamborghini in the garage.
I checked out his Instagram, and this guy, all his Instagram is him being like, oh, you know, just getting into my new Porsche car. And I'm like, this is awesome, because people are just paying you a lot of money and you're just buying Porsches.
If someone has a Porsche and calls it a Porsche car, they shouldn't have a Porsche.
But basically, this is a cult that it's for lonely people that are trying to find love, I guess. Really, it's for stalkers. It's for people on that edge of stalking. And you pay this guy a bunch of money. It's like Scientology. You got to pay him like 10 grand to take all these courses and classes. And then he'll tell you, oh, that person that told you to block them and never talk to them again, that's actually your twin flame, your soulmate. So do whatever you have to make them realize that. And like people have gone to jail. It's just like, it's wild. Yeah, that's
so easy. It's like, tell people that they're right to be obsessed. Like, that's the easiest thing. Like, you don't even need to be pushed to do that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's one of those things where I'm like, it's the first time I've ever watched a cult thing where I don't feel sad for the people. Like, I'm just like, you guys are idiots. Because not only that, but
they're just looking for someone to, like, make them do what they know they shouldn't do.
He just talks shit to you the entire time. Like, you take his course, and he's just like, you listen to me because I'm your leader, and you're a piece of shit. And I'm just like, this is what the hell is going on? So yeah, watch it. It's pretty interesting. And then the last thing I saw was, I did go see the new Hunger Games movie the other night, which was like packed. I thought, it's been out for like a week. And it was just like, it was like a busload of, I think like university athletes, like female athletes. And it was just like the theater was packed. And it was me and like some random like 50-year-old guy by himself. So I don't know what one was more creepy, but me or him.
People can enjoy Hunger Games no matter the age.
They're great stories, man.
Anyway, I didn't like it. I thought it was bad.
He called it a musical. I looked at his Letterboxd review and I was like, what are you going on with?
There's way
like
too much
3
music
songs in the movie.
There's people
because the main character likes to sing, and he called it a musical.
There's people singing whatever her name is. She's got a weird southern accent that just like is terrible. She's like singing fucking Lumineer songs or something. Like that's
sounds
the
awful,
quality of them. Like
it was a good movie. You're crazy.
Like I said, I don't feel crazy. As my Letterboxd review said, someone in the theater literally yelled out, "This is cringe" in the middle of a song.
Oh, no.
So it just, you know what? If there's no J-Law, I'm not interested, guys.
Same though.
Jenna Malone.
And we got Rachel.
But yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about because I'm not getting into my whole spiel about I'm watching some reality show with Rick Campanelli. I'm not getting into that.
So, oh, hell yes.
Not Rick the Tim.
So I'll save that for another day. So anyway, let's get into the film for...
Hold on now.
Oh, shit, Jill,
You're
I always
forgetting Mike.
Well, you know what? You said you didn't want to go.
You always forget Mike.
Oh my god,
okay.
I forgot that too. I thought we were just gonna get into it.
Oh yeah, jeez.
We should. Let's just skate into it.
No,
Mike's always like, shut the fuck up,
we're
Jill,
going to
but
Mike.
no, you missed
it. You know
it.
what? Everyone screwed me up because you guys were like, no, Mike was like, I have to go last. And so it screwed me up because I'm always last. Because you guys put me last so you can zone me out for a bit. You can relax, do whatever you're doing.
And then you forget about Mike.
I thought we were recording for 10 minutes and I glanced over and it's been like 40 already.
Yeah,
so
really.
I don't know what you talked about.
Ro just went in a spiral.
Yeah, my brain shut off when I said Rick Campanelli. So, Mike, what have you been consuming?
Well, in a very anticlimactic thing, we will just be getting into the movie because I've had a rough couple of weeks because it's Black Friday and Black Friday prep. I've been reading some bell hooks because I want to be even more devastated than I am. And honestly, other than that, all I've been doing is watching Drag Race UK, and I'm almost finished Insecure, which is like completely devastating me. And also, by the way, one of the best soundtracks of any TV show of all time.
Nice.
Like, Ro, you would love it. The soundtrack is absolutely superb. It's wonderful. That's honestly all I have to say. So it's like, let's just pretend that didn't happen.
Well, let's get into the movie for this episode. Jill, it was your pick, and you picked Get Out 2017. Let us know why did you choose this? What impacted Jill in 2017 to make this movie just so important to you?
Well, I chose Get Out because I think it kind of falls into the holiday season thematically, because it's about meeting your in-laws for the first time, or, you know, being around in-laws. And it's always a nerve-wracking experience, but it's a whole new level of anxiety that comes into play when you're a Black person coming to meet your white girlfriend's family. And I think on a very basic level, a lot of people can relate to this sense of dread with like Thanksgiving and Christmas looming over us. So that's why I chose it. I thought it'd be a fun pick for this time. But yeah, the first time I saw this was on an Air Canada flight, and I loved it. But yeah.
The ideal cinematic experience, the back of someone's seat in Air Canada while someone farts next to you. Yeah.
Didn't even get the can.
Oh, God. And someone's, you know, fucking in the bathroom or filming an OnlyFans jerk off. Like,
love it.
Well, this is dived. Yeah, this is dived into some debauchery.
Listen, that's an airplane experience right now, okay?
Jesus Christ.
So let's get into the trailer, and we'll be back with the synopsis and first experiences.
Mom and Dad, this is my boyfriend.
Call me Dean and you hug me, my man.
So how long has this been going on, this thing?
Something is weird. It's the people.
Something wrong?
I can't move. Why can't I move?
You've been chosen.
You're so scared.
Get Out, rated R.
Get Out was written and directed by Jordan Peele, and the story is as follows. After a few months of dating, Chris Washington, a Black photographer from Brooklyn, New York, hesitantly agrees to go upstate for the weekend to meet his girlfriend Rose's affluent white family. At first, Chris reads the family's overly accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to reconcile with their daughter's interracial relationship, but as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries leads Chris to uncover a sinister truth that's anything but skin deep.
So, first experiences, is this our first time seeing it? Were we living under a rock and we've just never seen this before? And that is meant to be rude, because I don't know how you have lived this long and not seen this. But we'll start with you, Mike.
Well, I saw this in theaters with a bunch of degenerates. In 2017, and it was one of those things where it was like quite an experience. We, you know, we're fans of like Key and Peele, so, you know, like him doing a horror movie was huge, especially since like if you watched Key and Peele, you know that like they have this like particular brand of like surrealism in their comedy that does always border on horror. It's like absurd and surreal, and so I just was like, this is gonna be amazing. So we went like opening weekend, of course, and it became like kind of an instant classic, although it's one that I don't watch that often because I don't know, it's not you know, like a put it on every 3 months banger to me. It's not that type of movie, you know. It's not a Nightmare on Elm Street 4 or a Saw 2. So, yeah, I honestly think I've only watched it once since then before we recorded for this. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, so I'm really cool because I was living in Toronto at this time, and this was when I used to go to all the early screenings of things to check things out. So
humble brag.
Yeah, so I got to see this before the critics or anyone saw it. So I went with me and a few of my white buddies to go see this movie, and the whole crowd was just predominantly black. I felt like I was the only white dude there watching this movie. And yeah, I had a very interesting experience watching it, where I think there were certain jokes and stuff that I didn't 100% understand at the time, or I didn't get what was so funny. But it's one of those that I've seen it a few other times since then. And yeah, I mean, I understand why people really like it. And it was a very unique experience seeing it for the first time. That maybe I'll get into later when we're discussing the movie, because I don't want to spoil all my thoughts on the movie before getting into it. That's all. Or start talking about specific scenes that people were reacting to. That's all. So, Gill, you already said you saw it on an Air Canada flight, so I'm not going to ask you. Rowan, what was your first experience seeing this?
I'm trying to remember. Was I with you, Mike, when we saw that? I saw this? Yeah. Because I do know this was probably one of my last theater goings in Newfoundland. Because I'm thinking, I would also been moving to Toronto that year. So yeah, I remember going to see it. I remember it being packed. It was definitely like pretty much sold out. And then of course, lovely Newfoundland. It was definitely a pretty much all white audience.
Yeah.
And kind of like Mike, like I was a big Key and Peele fan, and I was interested to see how this would play. I mean, obviously, just my family makeup, I've always kind of been exposed to not just black cinema, but black horror. So I was kind of very interested being in this all-white audience and just seeing how they would react and whether it would be good or bad. Hoping it would be good, because I was like, oh, if it's bad, like this, this isn't going to be good for them. So yeah, that was kind of my first experience. And like Colton, I'm not really going to say much more, because I'm sure I'll get into more of that as we talk about it. I mean, was there anything important you want to talk about, Jill? Was there like someone annoying sitting beside you, or?
I don't remember that flight, but just cut me out. It's
too
fine.
many pre-drinks.
I got nothing.
Pre-flight drinks. That's okay. So
no, Jill was like that person on the flight who was like hammered by takeoff.
This was at the time, 2017. It came out on Air Canada not too long after it came out in theaters, and this is when
wild.
I was taking a lot of flights to the States to visit my then boyfriend. So yeah, I watched a lot of bangers on
I think I read
flights.
somewhere the world premiere was on an Air Canada flight. So
yeah, that was me. Colton got his little brag, but
yeah, it was a couple of days before I saw it. Actually, it was
exactly
on the Air Canada flight.
So let's get into it. Let's get into the bowl of dry Fruit Loops and glass of cold milk of it all. You know where we're gonna start? Our favorite scene and or favorite kill. You know what? We kind of skipped you, Jill, for the first experiences. So why don't you kick it off?
Okay, because I got 4.
Jill's
just say one, because I don't want you to take all of the scenes in the movie.
Jill's like, my favorite part was minute 3 until a minute 102.
Jill's just gonna read the script, the entire script.
Okay, fine. I won't be a giant dirtbag. But yeah, I think the murder of Mr. Armitage was with the deer antlers has to be my favorite scene or kill. I love right before that where Chris is sitting back in the chair with the TV in front of him, and it's really 70s rec room kind of thing going on. And he's staring at this deer rack on the wall, and it's framed really nicely. I think it's a great shot, a little bit of foreshadowing, and I love that Mr. Armitage is so brutally killed with the antlers, and I love what symbolically that represents. The hunter has finally become the hunted, and all comes full circle with Chris's trauma from the hit and run of his mother, the deer on the highway, and now he finally takes his power back with the antlers, and I think that's really beautiful. So I won't say anything else yet, but Rowan, enlighten us. What's your favorite scene?
Oh, jeez. I don't like this pressure, because then I have to have Mike and Colton. If I pick the wrong scene, it's the scene they pick. They're just staring me down.
We are.
I mean, I'm pretty basic, bitch. I mean, I think the favorite scene has to be the first sunken place scene. I just think it's iconic now. And to me, I remember seeing that in the theater, and that was the scene where I was just Jordan Peele is different. He's definitely at the top of the game already on his first movie. That's all, that scene's always in my head. I'm always thinking about that scene, how beautiful it looks. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, my favorite scene is actually the "Give me the keys" scene.
Oh, yes.
Which I think is what I would call probably the payoff for all of the tension simmering for the entire movie, because one of the most interesting things about Get Out when I'm watching it, other than the multiple different interpretations of the screenplay and how great it is just wondering as you were watching it, how complicit Rose was throughout the entire thing. Obviously, their relationship on a first watch seems great. It seems very charismatic. It seems very much she's understands all these microaggressions and all these little sideways remarks, and basically she's very much an ally, or seems that way for the entire movie. So basically, as I was watching it, I was okay, there's the little reveal of obviously that she has a past of dating like other black people in the box upstairs, but I was like, okay, was that just a lie, or like she didn't want to, was it a fetishization? What is this explicitly? And then I was like, okay, I need it like stated explicitly what it is. But instantly she's like, yeah, let's get out of here, like let's leave. And I just love like when he descends the stairs and about how like the family are kind of starting to slowly like encroach on him like vultures, and basically him constantly asking for like, come on Rose, like where's the keys, give me the keys, to like ultimately her saying like, you know, I can't give you the keys, right, babe? Yeah. Like in this like just blank face, like all the emotion wiped away. It's so twisted. It's like, and it hits perfectly like a gut punch that like for me, it's like the payoff of all of like the tension for the, you know, the previous probably 80 minutes of the movie up to that point. So that's easily my favorite scene.
That's my number 2.
Nice.
Speaking of number 2, I need to... No, I'm kidding.
What about you, Mike? What's your favorite scene or kill?
Honestly, it was actually difficult to pick because there's so many like great little like setups in this movie. But honestly, the thing I always think about that isn't, you know, the raw basic scene is the party scene. Yeah. You know, I just think it's so absolutely, like, to me that was like the perfect setup for the rest of the movie, in that like it's just this like whatever 10-minute long like absolute cringe fest, and like especially when you're watching it like as a white person, it's like oh my god, like, yeah, you know, it's you're like seeing people, you know, and maybe, you know, depending on who you are watching the movie, like yourself, and it's just like it's so cringy, and like, but also absolutely like as it goes further into the scene, like it's just so fucking like dread inducing. Like that one moment with the flash like just erases everything before it for me, and I'm like like hey, everybody I think has been there. It's like busted, but then it ends up just completely snapping and changing like the tone of everything that comes after. I just think it's such a great scene. It put me through the ringer of like 8 different emotions. Honestly, it was I just thought it was so brilliantly done. All the actors, like, kudos for being so fucking creepy. Like
Yeah, it also pays off and like basically shows that there is actual sinister intentions on the go. It's not just racism, right? Like there's something really fucked up on the go, where it's like it culminates in like the auction scene, right, with like all the bingo cards and stuff like that. I
love the auction.
And they like it literally just mask off like moment that's fairly early in the movie, right? Like it's
that it basically lets you in that knows that there's something sinister going on, but still we don't know explicitly what it is yet, right? And that's what I like so much about that scene as well, where it's just enough to like reel you in a little bit more, but it doesn't spoil the twist or where the movie's going at all.
No, it like kind of confirms what you know as a viewer, but then it's like, no, like this is, you know, they're like, listen, we're not gonna talk down to you, but you seriously don't fucking know. You have no idea.
Also, that really like chubby guy who goes like, well, black is in fashion. It's just like, it's like perfect line delivery, I have to say. It's just so great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, yeah, that scene's so good. This was always, you know, I've seen this a couple. I'm kind of like Mike, where I don't always like, you know, pop this in all the time, but it was kind of interesting because I've had like some big conversations with it's like my brothers missed this when it was in the theater, so like I had bought it, we all sat down and watched it, like mom and dad hadn't seen it or anything, so it was interesting. Obviously, you know, we had like big conversations of just like situations, which funny enough, you know, it gave me like a different kind of cringe, I guess is how I would describe it. Cause not only have I experienced this with having like the secondhand cringe of like being in white events with my brothers who are black and them having to experience this, but also, you know, I thought about the funny events where, because the majority of my family is black, so just kind of the reversal of it, where I've been like a white person, where usually at family events it's like me and my mom are the only white people and everybody else is black, so it was kind of funny just to see the differences, and you know, it just kind of gave me a good laugh, and I just thought that it was interesting because, like I said, you know, I was thinking about, especially with this watch, like other other black horror that usually does deal with like themes of racism and stuff, usually a little more on the head, a little more campier. The first one that really came to me, I think just because we used to watch it all the time in my house, was Tales from the Hood, which is like an anthology. It's great. Maybe
that's a good one.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll do it. And then obviously like Candyman for a little more refined. I usually don't like to bring that into the mix because obviously, Candyman's like written by white people. It's, all done by white people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting because I was like, not only did Jordan Peele kind of like tap and kind of make the genre like his, he is the master now of like this black horror cinema, but I don't think anyone's ever put, the subtlety of like microaggressions and just like, I say casual racism, but just like subconscious racism that most white people don't realize they're carrying because it's just they're conditioned and socialized like that. And I was just like, I don't think anyone's ever actually put this on film and had it connect with, pretty much everybody. I mean, this movie was fucking huge. So
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this was an interesting watch for me as well, because when I watched it with my family as well, I come from a little town in Labrador with, I think when I was growing up, there was one black family that was, the dentists or something in town, right? I watched this with my mom, so hopefully she doesn't listen to this episode, but it was very much like, I was like curious what her thoughts on this would be, obviously, right? And of course she enjoyed it, but just once again, going with like those prejudices or the microaggressions, at the end of it, she was like, oh yeah, that main guy, he was such a good black actor. That's what she like felt the need. He's not just a good actor. You have to say he's such a good black actor. Which
let's
just
really
like,
hope
oof.
she doesn't listen to this now.
Yeah, it's like oof, like all right. And I'm glad you enjoyed the movie, but you kind of missed some of what was being said in it. I think
I feel like that's a classic white family moment though. When you watch Get Out, you're supposed to have that where you're like, oh yeah, old people, man. That's what happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was gonna say I wanted to talk about it. I was thinking because, like I said, I don't watch this very often, so there was a lot of stuff that like I didn't necessarily. I'm like, oh, this scene's coming up. I want to talk about the intro. I forgot that the intro was this good to the film.
Oh yeah, the cold open is excellent. Yeah.
What because not only is it kind of laying that groundwork, but like super subtly, because you can tell he's in a nice neighborhood, but you don't really know what's going on. But I was just like, what a like classic setup of like, yeah, like he literally just walking and then like this guy just grabs you and throws you in a
and
trunk.
It's basically all a oneer as well, right? Like I think it's following him along the sidewalk and tracking back. Like once again, there's something when like a directorial debut starts with a oneer that is just like instantly it's like, oh, there's a confidence here because it's a very complicated thing to do. Obviously it takes a lot of rehearsal. Like you're hiding 100 people working behind the camera, right, in order to get this. And in this scenario in particular, you have like the cars driving along, you have stunts of choking him out and dragging his body and all this stuff. There's a couple of different levels to it that, like, once again, I very much think it's a very competent, very effective cold open. I love the music as well, like the Roger Rabbit like fading away to the score, like the violin screeching. Like, yeah, it's just it oozes confidence when you're watching it right off the bat.
And that like uncomfortably long shot of just the car driving away in the distance
with credits.
Also, I love that by the time you kind of get to the end and you realize obviously that was what's his name, the brother
Jeremy.
And then when you put the pieces together in your head and you look at how absolutely like drastically different their styles of like recruitment, I want to say, I don't know how else to put it, are capture, whatever. She's like the long con and he's just like brute force and violence.
Yeah, she's like a seductress and he's literally just like a barbarian or a brute or something, right? Like,
well, I mean, and obviously you get that right away because like he's just like, do you do MMA?
Yeah.
Not to mention he's wearing like a knight helmet when he does it as well. Like old-timey knight helmet. Yeah.
I was going to say too, this movie will always, even if it wasn't a good movie, I feel it'll always be in my praise because not only do you get the amazing cold open, but then once we get the Get Out, it just leads in the Redbone, Childish Gambino.
And this was the first time I ever heard Redbone. So I was like, man, this is like an effortlessly
Yes,
cool
it also
song.
was the
like,
first time I ever heard
Oh,
of
really?
it. I
Okay.
was not, like, I had seen Community, but I was not, like, a huge Donald Glover guy. Like, I don't really like any of his, like, rap albums. But that Childish Gambino album that Redbone is on is like one of my all-time favorite albums. I listen to that like every week still.
That's really funny because I love Childish Gambino.
Yeah, I mean, I just not my kind of rapper, but I think like musically and sonically as a singer, I'm like way more into him, and you know, I'm a big fan of like 70s funk, so I was like very interested in that, and I just think it's also interesting because this movie also forever in my mind, like always, like I always, when I think about Jordan Peele, I think about Childish Gambino. When I think about Childish Gambino, I think about Jordan Peele, and I really wish at some point I was like, man, let's get Donald Glover in a movie. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, I think they're linked in my head as well because of Redbone as well. Because like searching up this movie afterwards, like, oh, what was that cool song that played there in the beginning? You know. But I also watched Community, so I knew him as Troy for all these years, and I found it really funny when he was like making the pivot into be like a serious artist and whatnot. But yeah, I thought that's so cool. Like once again, it goes from that Run Rabbit song, traditional like horror strings, to like almost like this weird like, I don't know, Bayou song or something, you know, and then it's literally Redbone. It's just it's such a whiplash, but somehow it kind of all still works. Like it's all of a similar vibe that it's like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, it's neat. It feels like something fresh, like right off the bat.
I really like the theme song that like comes on during the credits. It's in Swahili, and it's so haunting, and it kind of gives me like White Lotus vibes, you know, like it's super scary and cultural, and you just know it's like tying into everything.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of brilliant of them too, just to kind of give those like natural horror strings and stuff, and then intertwine them with kind of, you know, this like traditional kind of like African sounding music, just to really, I think, put a stamp on it of like, not only can I, you know, present like this black horror movie about racism, but like everything about it can like celebrate like the blackness of it, like from the music to, you know, to what's on the film, that like he just kind of made sure everything was like, here you go. And just like the racism, you know, and we're talking about how it's like so subtle at the beginning and everything, like having that intertwined, because I do think those strings and the African chords come in a couple times during the film, where it's also like subtly hitting you to, you know, think that it's there.
Yeah. I was going to say, speaking of the racism, I think one of the strongest scenes in the movie, this would have been my runner-up, I think, is when they get to the house, and Bradley Whitford is very much doing like the lame dad thing, but trying to relate to, you know, his daughter's like black boyfriend. And almost like every line of dialogue said here is so clever, with like multiple reasons as to why it's said. You know, like, for example, like, you know, my mother loved her kitchen, so we keep a piece of her in there. Where it's literally like, oh, Georgina's there, hint, hint. Or like, the nearest house is across the lake, total privacy, which is like, okay, that's going to matter later on in the movie. Or like mentioning how the father lost to Jesse Owens in front of Hitler, who's Walter. It's like, there's all these things. The black mold in the basement. Every single line of this is like, on a first watch, it just makes sense for like a dad just kind of talking too much and kind of being that annoying, kind of embarrassing father, like kind of just going on, I would have voted for Obama for a third term, that sort of shit.
Right.
But on a rewatch, it's like, oh, every line was crafted like so perfectly that it has multiple meanings, that it's very unsettling on a rewatch.
It's terrifying, yeah.
Yeah, and every single time when I rewatch this movie, I find like other little lines that I missed, or other like explanations as to why this is in the movie, that just makes it so clever. And what's interesting is, I've read this screenplay a couple of times. It's not in the screenplay. The screenplay for this movie actually isn't very good. I know he won an Oscar for it, but he clearly won it for like what was on screen, not for the actual screenplay, because like you read it, like the cold open that we were just praising, like that's not in the screenplay. Like it's this weird discussion of like a family sitting down talking about Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse, and talking about how is the person who plays Mickey inside of the mascot suit still Mickey, like kind of giving this idea of a person inside of a person.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have like this really like, it's not like economical. It's not clever. It's very like clunky. And a lot of the screenplay, when you read it as well, like it doesn't have a lot of those clever lines of dialogue. So I would love to know at what point in production he actually came up with this and like kind of finally like got to this point where it's like every line of dialogue sings and there's like a real purpose for it, because it's not there in like the main draft that goes around. It's really interesting.
Did you read the like book of it that they put out? Because they did publish it.
So what I was reading was the one. Yeah, so the one I read was for the Oscars that they put out, the For Your Consideration one. And that is the one that it still begins with this big, like, it's like 5 or 6 pages. And, you know, it's this big, long opening scene where a family is discussing Mickey Mouse. And then, like, a person is getting, like, taken away in the background, essentially. And someone notices at one point, but they keep talking. And then it ends, like, which I'm sure we'll get to the ending at some point as well. But the ending, like, third act is completely, like, different. Like, Rose is killed off right away. So it's Jeremy who's the one chasing everybody. The ending is completely different, ends on a much dour note, which I'm sure we'll get into. It's very strange. There's a recurring motive of "You've Got a Friend in Me," like that Toy Story song.
Yeah.
All throughout the screenplay. It's super different. It's weird. If you're someone who likes reading screenplays, I encourage you to read it just because it's very different. But I would love to know at what point it was refined and made into the movie that we saw on screen, because it's just way better.
I love screenplays. This is very intriguing to me, and I had no idea. I definitely need to check it out.
Yeah, and also there's even stuff like there's like typos and shit all throughout it, which is just like, once again, it's wild that like the screenplay, like what the movie became.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially you brought up the black mold one, which I didn't notice until this watch. That I was like, oh, that's super witty. And as I said, as a big fan of Key and Peele, like one of their really famous skits is the Black Weatherman, where he gets in an argument with all the white anchors about black ice. And like the white people are talking about black ice as if they're black people and why they're bad and everyone hates them. And then, the weatherman's like talking about black ice should get up and revolt and like cause revolution. And it's a funny skit. Go check it out. But I was just like, yeah, it's interesting. I saw a lot of pieces of Key and Peele skits in this where I was like, he's been talking about so many, like just so many threads in this that were really interesting how he wove it into it. But yeah, like the script that just keeps on giving, or the dialogue that keeps on giving.
Yeah, like
apparently.
whatever it is. Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah.
You mentioned his, obviously, Key and Peele, the background in comedy. What do you guys think about like the comedy in this movie? How do you feel about it overall?
I love it when Jordan Peele does this because, it's part of who he is from his past like work in comedy. And also I think comedic relief is a big part of Black culture, especially in a horror movie. And so I think it's really important that it's there to really offset the really dark themes that are in here. So I really liked it. I
really like Laurel, so I was a fan when I found out, when I watched it, when I was like, oh shit, Little Rel's in this, right on.
I didn't know him before this. This was the first thing I saw him in.
But yeah, I kind of agree with Gill. Like I like that he linked it to, what he's kind of known for, lets him like flex his muscle a little bit in that. And I like the move because I think there could have been a criticism if he really it was so serious. And, I feel like there's room for it, just so, you're not just digging up trauma and talking about trauma. And, it's kind of what we always talk about, right? Like just this, the A24, the high concept horror, just about trauma and, giving it like some sort of valve there.
Yeah, you need a release for all the tension. And like this movie, like as I kind of said with my favorite scene, a lot of it is just tension building for so long. And like there's so many of these scenes that obviously they're really off-putting or end on like a really weird note. Like let's say, for example, when Georgina gets, he confronts her about unplugging his phone and she does the no sort of scene, right? With her nose bleeding stuff. So unsettling. You need like a tension release after that scene, right? So I agree. A lot of the comedy I really like in this, but the one time I will say that it goes too far for me is when finally it's right after my favorite scene where Chris gets taken down into the basement. And then we get, like a probably like 8-minute SNL skit with Little Rel going to the cops, and then multiple cops coming in, and then they're just talking to the cops and going over the story and talking about how crazy he is. I was just like, what am I watching here? Why is this in the movie? Why is it so long? It completely grinds everything to a halt on like what you'd call is probably like the most tense point in the movie, or like literally like the climax in a way of just like up to this point of like, okay, what's gonna happen to Chris? But for some reason, we're just on this adventure with Lil Rel for like way too long. So other than that, I really do like the comedy in the movie. But man, that scene drives me crazy. Did it bump for anybody else? Are you guys fine with it?
I have something to add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
There's like a little bit of a duality there because like in the beginning of the movie when Chris is at that family event that's going on, he tries to, seek brotherhood or friendship in the other black men that he sees at the party. And then he's like really taken aback when he doesn't receive that reciprocation. So I think it's interesting to see his friend in the real world seeking companionship with the police officer because he's a TSA officer, but also because she's a black woman. And she also brings in 2 other black officers and they're all laughing at him. So he's also feeling that like disconnect that Chris is feeling with the supposedly black people at the party.
I just want to say that I totally get Colton's.
I think that's a very charitable reading of the scene, Jill. That's probably what Jordan Peele would say, but God, it just grinds everything to a halt.
Well,
anyways, go on, Mike.
No, listen, I don't disagree with either of you. But I love that scene, and this is going to be the most Mike thing I've ever said. But I love that scene because Erica Alexander plays the cop, and she was in one of my favorite shows growing up, Living Single. So I was like, it's Maxine! And I just love it. I love that scene. I look forward to it, actually, the whole movie. So it's just funny that, like, you want it taken out, and I'm like,
yeah, I'm
Erica
like, let's cut
Alexander's
this.
in it.
It's a better movie if you cut most of this, for sure.
I totally get it. It definitely does, like, kind of jar.
It just feels so out of place. It literally feels like an SNL skit in this movie. And once again, obviously, there's lots of comedy in this movie. There's, like, a real companionship between Chris and Rod that, like, I really like in the movie. Like, that where he's, like, just a phone call away. And all those little phone calls that punctuate the movie are great. But where you completely leave Chris to go hang out with Rod for, like, I don't know, 8 minutes or something. It's just way too long. It was just, I don't know, it was egregious to me.
I'm kind of, I'll even out the dog pile because the scene doesn't work for me totally. But see, to me, I don't mind the length of it, but I would have rather just spent the time with Little Rel kind of doing what he does later in the film, like where he's at.
Investigative work.
Investigative stuff, and it's just him. Like, I get what they were doing. I get why bring those people in, but I think Little Rel can hold the screen by himself for a decent amount of time. That, to me, I was like, maybe just like some fun stuff of him in Chris's house or like whatever. Like I could do with that. So I get it, Colton. Like it didn't overly work for me. And probably also, like you said, it was just because that, I'm brought so high up on like the tension meter there, and then it just drops out.
Yeah, it might even be less than 8 minutes or whatever it is, but it just feels extra long to me, whatever it is. Like, however long we're with Lil Rel there, it's too long. Too long.
I thought maybe we could talk about Catherine Keener for a little bit.
Oh,
sure.
Yes. You saw me, like, sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for her.
I was really thinking, obviously she's fantastic in this movie, but I was really thinking, like, what a great horror villain. Like, what because, everyone, all the white people in this really are villainous. And I think it's really funny because, this is it looks like a very patriarchal family. The grandfather in the video explaining stuff. The dad's the surgeon, the son wants to be like the dad. He's kind of running stuff. But like Catherine Keener's character is the one that's kind of like running the show. Like none of this is possible without her. And she just kind of has that like, Missy's got that gravitas in the family that it's like, I just always had the feeling that like they're kind of just doing what she says. And
I think it's very important, not just like for the plot machinations, that she is like a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Because, like, they always linger on, like, the Freud books and everything on her shelf in the background. And
yeah, which is great, because you should automatically know she's a villain, that they're, you know.
Well,
how dare you?
I mean, it's just so
everywhere.
important, because, like, as a couple, they're, like, the two sides of, you know, the human psyche, right? Like, the mind. Like, he's very tactical as the surgeon, and she's, like, you know, a surgeon in another way, right? I just love the conceit of her, like, you know, being essentially a hypnotist, like, knowing how to do this. Like, it was, when I was watching the movie the first time, I remember very much being like, this is really off-putting. Like, what is happening here? Like, the repetition of, like, you know, her swirling the tea off the cup and whatnot. And I was just like, it's very unsettling and unnerving, all this is. But I was like, I was wondering what it was for at the time. And then when it was, like, actually for hypnotism, and I was like, oh, this movie, once again, it's surprising me. It's going places, which obviously, it was Rowan, it was your favorite scene, you know, the sink into the floor scene.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, just when the music drops in it, and he drops in, and, like, the visual of it is just so, like I said, like...
It's stunning. It's stunning.
It's stunning. It's nothing that I've ever seen. I don't think it's ever been done, anything like that.
And it makes more sense than later on in the movie with the, like, TV motif visually.
So, just, like, so iconic. And, you know, I made sure I put a note, because I thought it was kind of interesting, you know. I feel Peele kind of, you know, took some flack with Nope a bit, because, you know, people were like, oh, the science fiction and blah blah blah, but, you know, I was kind of thinking, I'm like, the science fiction motif has been in these movies since Get Out. Like, the minute we do the sunken place, and especially the third act of this is
100%.
This is straight out of what is one of Jordan Peele's favorite shows, which is why he remade it, The Twilight Zone. I was this is a Twilight Zone episode. And, you know, I think it was just, like, it's ingenious to see those influences in there. Yeah, just because they're just so well done. But yeah, I was just like, you know, we should have saw the UFOs coming a couple movies in when we're talking about, like, brain transplants and all that kind of stuff.
Or, you know, the whole underground research facilities that span across the United States, you know, and Us. Yeah, I mean, science fiction is a pinnacle. Like, it's a mainstay in his horror, right?
But, like, Catherine Keener, to go back.
Yes.
I gotta
I derailed it. I'm sorry.
My absolute queen. So, yeah, Catherine Keener, definitely the, like, white feminist character, because she's not, like you were saying, Colton, about Bradley Whitford. You know, he's, like, really, really going out of his way to, like, ingratiate himself and be like, oh, I'm cool, like, making the dad jokes. I'm, like, the cool dad, you know, like, I'm hip and I'm down with it and blah, 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 and I vote for Obama. Yeah. And she's kind of there, and also, like, you know, you get that vibe from her, but, like, she very much stays back and is like, oh, my husband, you know what I mean? But, like, then when you start getting that, like, kind of the villain aspect creeping in, and it's like, it's like, to me, that's like the white feminist, is because it's so insidious. Yeah. It's like presenting that front of, like, allyship, but, like, is in fact, I'm in this for myself, you know?
I feel like that's a really important theme in the movie, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go off on this for a second. Going back to what Colton said in the beginning with the very intentional script and the lines and Bradley Whitford and what he had to say, one of the things he said was he almost got over it, referring to Rose's grandfather, who was beaten by a black man in the Olympics in front of Hitler. And it's like the basis for the whole premise of the movie. You know, he can't get over it, and then everyone wants to abduct black people so they can get their genetic advantages. So we have, like, true wolves in sheep's clothing. And then also we have the Armitage family, you know, with their white guilt and acting super awkward and apologetic towards Chris. But they also ask him at the party, like, really weird questions. Like, do you think black people have a genetic advantage in things? And then they're also, on the flip side of this, trying to buy, like, auction for him. So you get, like, white people trying to be, you know, conscientious of Chris being there. And is it all for show? Do they think they're doing good? While at the same time, they're doing something really sinister.
Yeah, they're interrogating what they need. Like, oh, is this a worthy person we should purchase? Like, you know, should I transplant my geriatric husband's brain inside of this vessel? Is it worthy, you know? I think it's interesting as well because, like, the whole Armitage family, other than Jeremy, weirdly enough, they all are, like, very fake, and obviously they are wolves in sheep's clothing, but I kind of like Jeremy in a way at the family as well, because he's just so brazen and blatant. But it's literally like you can hand wave that guy off because it's like, oh, he's, you know, he just goes too far. Like, that's just Jeremy. And every family at some point down the line, when you go far enough, you have a Jeremy that is just like, literally, it's like he's a bit of an embarrassment. He puts his foot in his mouth. You know, he says fucked up stuff, but people just let it slide because that's Jeremy. And I like that he is just, you know, he's just Jeremy in the movie, that is like instantly he's asking him about like, oh, if we fought, like who would win? Or, you know, he's just so brazen that I really like that character. And I really like Caleb Landry Jones as well. Because in this period of time, he was like getting a lot of work and he was popping up in so many different movies. And I really enjoyed his acting as well. So whenever I go back to this, I go like, oh yeah, like he was in like 3 or 4 good movies like over these couple of years. And like he's just a great character actor.
One of Jeremy's favorite movies is probably The Killer. So
yes, 100%. Yeah, he would have like the Fight Club poster on his wall, you know, the American Psycho skin routine, you know.
Jesus.
I wanted to give some love to Marcus Henderson. I feel when we talk about the kind of people we interact with, obviously I think everyone goes to like Lakeith Stanfield, which I will say, like everyone just knows him because he's so popular now. And, also Betty Gabriel's like very iconic in this.
Queen. She was so creepy.
Queen.
It's great.
To me, I think Marcus Henderson kind of outdoes both of them. Because I was thinking, especially where Chris, goes to talk to him and has that whole one-on-one with him. I was like, man, this is played so good, because I can only imagine how hard it is to act. I was like, this is probably the most in this movie where you can really tell that, like, there's a bit of whoever that actually is there, but it's Walter. Like, he just does such subtle things with his eyes and pauses that you're just like that's where I was like, wow, like, okay, they're like definitely in control.
So this is where Jordan Peele's strength as a director really shines, because I was watching just the making of after like the Blu-ray that I watched today. And essentially, he was given direction, apparently, on one of the first couple of days when he was in a scene, like it wasn't really working. And Jordan Peele told him, he was like, all right, your character has a secret that he really wants to tell everybody, but he can't let it go, not just yet. So you just got to have fun with that. And if you watch the performance, it is very much like you can tell, like the actor is like always wanting to like spill the beans about it. You can just see it like on his face. It's such a perfect like note to give the actor. And I just feel it throughout the whole movie. Like I didn't watch it this time with that in mind, but like in retrospect, I was like, oh, that's like perfect. That's literally what he's doing. Like, like the tears, his wide eyes, always smiling, like it's such an unsettling performance, but it very much feels almost like weirdly playful in a way, like very darkly so. Yeah.
I will say the scene of Walter running straight at him is a big hit in the Bailey Fraser household. My brothers cry laughing every time they watch it.
So that's a scene when I was watching it with my audience. They cracked up laughing. They were like, what's this guy doing? Like freaking out. Like, what's his deal? Like, just like, what's wrong with this guy? That I was just like, I found it scary when I watched it because he was moving at such a speed, but everyone in my audience like burst out laughing at that, especially when he makes like the, the right turn right at the end. Like, it's this great scene. Although in the third act, when he has to run again, significantly slower. I will notice that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, one of my other big notes was just, like, wasn't just the, we talked about the nuances of the racism stuff, but it was actually, like, the nuances of just, like, the interactions with all of the black folks in this, like, to each other. And, me and my brothers had a big conversation about this because, we kind of laughed watching it about, like, there's lots of times, like I said, like, I've mostly had experiences where I'm, like, the only white guy in the room, but it's just, like, how it's a thing my brothers always talk about, like, oh, yeah, if I'm out somewhere and I just see a black guy, like, I nod at him. We just nod at each other because it's just a thing. We recognize, like, we're the only like black people around. And it was just like little subtle things like that like, like we were just dying laughing like when we saw that. We were watching that experience, and like I said, I can't necessarily have that experience, but it was interesting seeing that experience with everyone else, because you know, my brothers were like, yeah, like they were laughing so hard at stuff like that, and they were like, yeah, this is 100% what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's doing that intentionally, obviously, as well, right? Like Chris immediately trying to like find companionship with Walter, and he's just such a weird guy. Or with Lakeith Stanfield when he's at the party and he's dressed all like strange. It's almost like a, you know, like a, I don't know. It just doesn't look right in that suit he's wearing. Like it's real goofy.
Yeah,
like
there's so many old-timey.
Yeah, it's like all these little moments in the movie where you can definitely tell like Chris is trying to like have brothership or kinship with these people, but it's just like, what is wrong with these people? And I guess what's wrong with them is they're explicitly not like him. You know, like, you know, they look like him, but there's a white guy inside there, you know? It's very much, once again, a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? It's
I thought it's so funny because just this was a moment when I was like thinking about the way he was dressed, and obviously it's supposed to be like very old-timey white. I was like, it looks like he's from one of the old silent Mickey Mouse cartoons. Right? Like literally like something from like the 20s.
Yeah.
Which very well, after, you know, Colton said there's supposed to be some Mickey Mouse talk in here.
There's supposed to be, yeah. There's supposed to be a big Disney influence on this, weirdly.
So
his name is Walt.
Maybe, yeah, that's yeah.
Walter. Come on now.
Oh my God!
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Oh, listen, you picking up on stuff. I love it. I'm like absolutely. My brain is melted. So I'm in awe. Just explain the whole film to me, Jill, please.
Well, just one more thing I wanted to bring up, and this kind of ties into the next movie, which we're reviewing today for the Patreon pick.
Yes, let's talk about Graveyard Shift right now. You know, we can talk about Get Out, but let's talk about Graveyard Shift.
Okay, so when they're comparing black people to deer, like being vermin, Mr. Armitage again, the subtext in that, he thanks them for like running over another deer and makes comments about how there's so many of them nowadays and they're ruining the planet. And then we also have the actual vermin of rats in Graveyard Shift. So I'm just bringing it all together, y'all.
Yeah.
But, and I love that they just keep bringing the deer imagery back in the movie, and then also tying that into his mom, basically being that deer when, she was involved in the hit and run. I don't know. I just love the deer imagery.
Like I said, so many meanings to it. I mean, obviously, like, a buck was like a racist term for a male slave. So another, like, what I thought I really liked in this watch, because, getting to think about all that stuff, because I'm, writing notes for it. But, him always, because, he's always kind of at the beginning trying to subvert the first impressions that people have of him. And, that I'm not just the stereotype that you guys are making me. Mm-hmm. And then where he briefly has to actually physically take, like, the deer horns and aggressively attack the dad. Yeah. And like I said, with these horns, which when you tie it into, like, this racist term of being a buck, it's just kind of, like, symbolic of...
taking back his power.
Yeah, taking back the power and just murdering the white people,
murdering the shit.
I think what you were just saying, where essentially like trying not to be what these people are expecting, is interesting as well, because I think Allison Williams' smile near the end of this movie is saying very much like, it's such a sick smile when she's getting choked out, but it's like she's like impressed, but also like she's like, I was right. I knew you had this in you. And it's such like a sick, like gross moment that it was just like, you can tell like throughout the movie they were expecting this sort of thing to happen at some point, and it's almost like their prejudices were like paid off in a way, where it's like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. That I love that moment of the smile. It's such like a mean, like gross thing to happen. And you can even see it on like Daniel Kaluuya's performance, that he's literally like, he doesn't want to be doing this. He doesn't want to lean into it. He doesn't want it to happen. But it's also like, it's a very conflicted moment that I think is a great thing that you probably wouldn't get if this was directed by, a white filmmaker. Yeah. I don't think that moment would be in the movie,
So I was going to say, before we kind of land the plane on, did we want to have a conversation about like the ending and just kind of the
I think we should get to the
it?
third act. Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you think this movie ends on a high note, or do you think it kind of starts to unravel a little bit? Or how do you feel about, I guess, the carnage from that moment on? Like, is it all like cathartic? Is it what you wanted the movie to end like, or does it feel a little bit asynchronous, or like,
I
what do you
absolutely love a like pivot into almost comedic, like extreme violence. Like, I always appreciate that in a movie. So this to me, and like you said, it is, I think for everybody watching it, cathartic. It has to be. It's kind of like the like inverse of the comedic relief moments, except you're getting it with extreme retributive violence.
Yeah, I think there's moments of it that work for me that I do like, for example, like the deer scene, or, I do like how like the brawl between Jeremy and Chris like really pays off. And it's like he can't just overpower Jeremy. He has like the jujitsu hold on him type of thing, right? He has to use his actual brain of like repeatedly trying to close the door to get the one up on him. For me, it's these weird subtle things where, and once again, this is going to be nitpicky as all hell, but a lot of the sound design when they're in these fight scenes, it really takes me out of it, because they're using like a lot of like weird splatter sound effects, but a lot of that's not being actually portrayed on screen. Like, I specifically jotted down when Walter shoots himself later in the third act, where he turns the gun on himself. It's like this big, like a gross, like almost like a grapefruit exploding or something, but like none of that's portrayed on screen. And there's moments of that throughout like that carnage sequence as well, where I wonder if Peele wanted to like even go further with it, or he wanted to show more, or if it was just literally like, oh, the sound design's in there now, we'll just roll with it. But it was something when I was watching it this time, it felt a little bit almost over the top. It wound up feeling like the sound design was for like a splatter movie, when that's not what we're watching. And then it just kind of started jogging my memory, or jogging my mind of like, is this what I really wanted with this third act entirely? So I never really settled on an answer, because I like bits and pieces of it. I do think the third act gets a little bit too messy, and it's definitely not my favorite part of the movie. But yeah, it was just something where I was just wondering what you guys thought of it overall. Like,
I was gonna say, like, I enjoyed it, kind of like you. There was bits and parts of it I couldn't really put my finger on it. Why? Like, I don't think it's like my favorite ending of all time. I do like the comedic bit at the end, 'cause like I said, I'm a sucker for Laurel, so I'm like, awesome, like, let's end this on like kind of a laugh there.
So I do like that specific moment as well, the TSA payoff. I do like that, and I think the original ending, which we'll get into in a minute, once you finish your point, I think would have been much worse. But I think it's kind of like there were so many different variations of this ending, and about like who was surviving and who was dying and how much carnage was being displayed, and is fucking Mickey Mouse in the ending or not. That is just literally like, it's messy. When I was watching this time, it just felt very messy from the point at which he was talking to the guy in the TV, like talking to the person he's going to get his brain transplanted into, because instantly at that moment I'm like, why are you using the old TV to talk to this guy? Like, there's no webcam on this, there's no mic, so is this all psychological? What is this going on? From that moment on, I find the movie starts to unravel a little bit, and some of it's intentional, but it was just, some of it was also just felt messy.
I think to me, I felt that they just had to off so many of the family members so quickly that it was just like all that awesome, like really slow burn tension of the whole, kind of like 2/3 of the movie. I just feel like it would have been better played out a little longer. I was just like, all right, so like we're going to kill the brother, we're going to kill the father, we're going to kill the mother, but it's like we're gonna do it really quick so we can get to the end of the movie, where I was like, I would have liked to seen these more drawn out, maybe like, a little more menacing, where like Chris really turns the tables and it's not just like a quick death, like he can actually like kind of have that revenge on each of them.
Yeah, it almost just feels almost like a dream ending, I guess, to me, to a certain degree. Like getting the one up on like all these people, brute force, like overpowering them all, like in just such the way he does it. I understand he's smart, but it's just, it's like I understand, I guess it's a power fantasy ending, but it just feels a little bit at odds with the rest of the movie that I've been watching that is like so intelligent and so like succinctly crafted that it feels a little bit odd to me. What do you guys think about that moment where he goes back and lets Georgina in the car? Because that was another moment for me that I was like, doesn't really work for me, I guess.
It was like Chekhov's mom of mother's death.
Yeah, I understand.
No, Chekhov's memory of mother's death. You know, it's like...
Yeah, for me, it doesn't work, I guess. There's multiple levels there where it's like Georgina, the whole movie, is concerned with the way she looks and about her hair being so and her makeup being so, but she runs at the car to get Ryan over. And then he goes back and picks her up, and then she's menacing, and it's like, oh, is this intentional? What is this? It's like, once again, there's these levels there that create confusion to me / messiness. But weirdly enough, Jordan Peele calls that scene the heart and soul of the movie. That specific choice there.
Her wig being askew in the car is one of the greatest.
Okay,
like
that's
3
genius.
seconds of that movie.
Good
Add
reveal.
it to the list.
Yeah, that's a good reveal for sure. But yeah, he talks about how it's like essentially Chris's soul being redeemed because, you know, obviously he's able to save this woman who's a surrogate for his mother in that moment and whatnot. But I didn't get that really when I was watching that scene. It just felt like to me it was like, we have to figure out a way to get somebody in a car for the car to crash because we can't have him drive away. It was kind of like, I was seeing like the machinations behind it, I guess, where, I don't know.
It could, and it could also be because of the fact that kind of every family member has their moment where they come at Chris, like Walter, you know, runs at him and whatever. And, you know, this is her time to shine. This is her time to get revenge for him fucking up her weird little family.
Yeah, I guess I just would have liked something more in line with her character. Like, because her main thing the entire movie was like her appearance, right? It was like, you know, have her vanity and whatnot. It's like, it would have made more sense if it was like she was the one preparing him for the surgery, putting makeup on him or something silly, like, you know, making sure he looks his best or something like that, rather than she's rushing at the car to, I don't know, do what? To pay off.
Yeah, and that's why the wig askew reveal is so great, because
yes, I agree that the wig askew reveal is great. I agree.
Listen, he had to show the wig askew. Like, what are
you could have got the wig askew in another way. Yeah,
but that's how
I guess,
he did it.
You know, maybe it's just a weird hang up I have. But like, once again, like when I was watching the third act of this movie, there's just it unravels a bit. I have multiple issues in the third act where I would literally describe probably the first, I don't know how long this movie is, 90 minutes as like almost perfection outside of that little Rel Howery scene, right? Whereas like the third act, I have multiple little like, that's an odd choice where I don't know if it fits the rest of the movie. And I think a lot of it is like how much this ending was just changed and messed with, I think.
I gotcha. For me, I liked how fucking chaotic it was at the end because there was so much like meticulous tension being built throughout the whole movie. And then at that point where Rose can't get the keys out of her bag, everything starts to like fall apart. And I don't know what's going to happen next. And everything keeps like coming at you. Someone dies, someone else dies. I'm shocked by the grandmother and I'm shocked by everything. Mostly the Fruit Loops in the cup. Dry.
Which my audience also had a really big reaction to. Apparently that was like a...
psychotic.
Yeah, apparently a lot of people believe that like white women ate their cereal that way at a certain point in history. Like had the milk and the cereal separately or something. I don't know.
Or she's just crazy.
Yeah, it was craziness. I agree. But yeah, do we want to discuss the original ending?
Yeah,
like
I'm curious on
we're just about to get there.
Yeah.
Or do you know the original ending?
No.
Okay, so the original ending was going to be essentially, the one way from the first script is literally it's not Rose out there, right? He winds up, Jeremy gets shot through the chest. And then he winds up kind of crawling on Chris, and Chris turns over and strangles him with the rifle. I think he like holds it against his throat. And then the cops pull up, and 2 cops pull Chris away. And in that version, like the house is on fire and everything in the background, so there's no way to get any sort of evidence. And basically what they do is they lock him up. And Lil Rel comes and visits him like 6 months later. And he's locked up in a penitentiary, and essentially he's trying to get Chris to give him more details on some of the names or the names of the procedures or the people involved in order to take down the whole system. But Chris is just like not interested in it. Essentially, he just says like, I got my comeuppance, you know, basically he saved Georgina, or, you know, he saved his mother in his mind. So he's just like, you know, basically he's a martyr. He's like, just lock me up. So that was that version. Then they actually shot the second version, which is an alternate ending. It's very similar, but essentially it's basically he strangles Rose to death, and then the cops pull up and come and pull him off. And it's the exact same thing, penitentiary ending. And then it's the ending we got. So there's multiple different endings to this movie. The very first script ending as well, it ends with "You Got a Friend in Me" playing over, I guess, as he's walking away for whatever reason, you know.
I like that choice.
Lil Rel giving up on him, you know, type of thing, where it's like he can't get his friend out of prison. But yeah, it's both like prison endings, and essentially
that's bleak.
And essentially what Jordan Peele said was, when he was writing the movie originally, it was during the Obama era. So essentially he wanted to put a movie out there that said, like, racism isn't gone. Just because we have a black president doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore. So he needed a dour ending to show that, like, hey, there's still, like, loads of black men being unjustly incarcerated. And he needed a very dour ending. But by the time the movie got made, he was saying society kind of pivoted to be a little bit more woke / knowledgeable about, like, racism. And he felt that having that sort of ending would have been like a no-duh sort of ending. So he pivoted to something that's a little bit more hopeful, hoping that, like, society would keep trending that way.
To be honest, the first time I was watching it, that's like when the car starts pulling up and you don't realize that it's a TSA one.
Yeah.
I literally was like, in my head, I was tracing that was going to be the way it was going to end.
Well, and that's why I think the ending you went with is actually the best ending, because all of us, as soon as the cop car pulls up, if you're at all knowledgeable about, like, what's going on in society, you all, in your head, you instantly write the other ending. You write him either being death by cop, getting shot because it's a black man, you know, performing some sort of perceived to be violent act. And in this instance, an actual violent act of strangling somebody or shooting them or whatever happens. And then on the other way, if he gets away with it, he's going to wind up in prison. So we already wrote those endings, so they're not interesting endings. So I kind of do like in this scenario that he went with kind of the cheesy, more like, in, you know, TSAs aren't driving those vehicles that look similar to a police car, but it's like, I like that he went that route. It's you know, it's elicited a big reaction from my audience as well. Like when the cop car pulls up, it was very much like everyone in the theater knew, like, what was happening in that moment, right? And people were not happy, right? So I like that it subverted our expectations in a clever way that actually feels somewhat set up for the rest of the movie as well. I don't know what Lil Rel's ending would have been otherwise. I'd have to go back and read, like, what's the last scene you see him, but I guess it's like he's just out of the movie at a certain point, and then he's in, you know, the very last scene still investigating, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the better ending, because I had the same thing. Like when I saw the cop car, I was like, oh, here we go. This is what you know. I automatically thought I was like, they're gonna shoot him, and then I think it was a smart move. And you know, for a movie that's so heavy, I don't think you would need to end it also in like black trauma, because I think that's kind of an easy move to go to, especially in horror, and usually black horror movies that aren't directed by black people or.
But yeah, if you want to see people. that alternate ending is like on the Blu-ray. I'm sure it's on YouTube and stuff. It's very much like a very dour ending, like, you know, walking off into, you know, the jail cell, never to be seen again. Big old white guard, you know, pushing him in there type of thing, right?
So are we comfortable to go into rating this?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's land the plane. If you are new to the podcast, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Mike, we'll start with you this time. What would you rate 2017's Get Out?
I'm gonna go for a slay. Probably not super surprising. I loved it when I saw it. I love it every time I watch it. And I think that there's, like, the story is brilliant, but I just think that there's also a real, like, level of technical artistry here that, like, I think for a few years was, like, just hadn't been seen, like, for a debut. And I just, it's one of those movies that I always think is like, oh, it was definitely my top 10 for, like, probably 3 or 4 years. So yeah, it's a slay. I love it every time I watch it, and I look forward to when people say they haven't seen it, and I'm like, okay, maybe we'll get a, like, watch party on the go. And there's not that many movies that I look forward to watching, like, maybe for a 5th or 6th time. So yeah, slay. Jill, what are you thinking?
Well, no surprise, I'm also going to give it a slay. Yeah, something about that Air Canada flight. I don't know. No,
it was smelling farts and.
Jeez. In all seriousness, though, you know, I've loved every Jordan Peele movie I've seen since that he's put out. I love his work. I love how dark it is. I love what it represents. And got some bangers in there that's going to be on that playlist, I hope.
Yeah, is this
great
an excuse
cast.
to put Redbone on? So.
I think it is. But yeah, great cast. I don't know. I love everything about it. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, so this is one when the first time I saw it, like I said, I didn't really like it a whole lot. I thought it was okay the first time I saw it. Like, I felt very pressured by the audience, constantly laughing along to everything that sometimes I didn't understand, that it felt very much like watching a movie with a friend who it's like, this is my favorite movie of all time. You have to like it. You feel like this pressure to really enjoy it, which I still thought it was pretty good, like okay overall. But this is one, like every single time I watch it, I find more and more to enjoy about it. And you know, I think this is like the 6th time I've seen it since it's come out. So it just continues to grow. Other than this time, this was the first time where, like I said, in the third act, there was aspects to it where I didn't truly enjoy, but I still don't think I'm willing to like dock it enough to only give it a yay. So it's a slay from me as well. I do think that a lot of this is very, you know, it's excellent, especially as a directorial debut. I think the acting in particular is really strong. I don't think we talked about Allison Williams enough. And I mean, it's probably more important to highlight all the other, you know, black actors in the movie, but Allison Williams, this was her first movie. She was in TV leading up to this, but like she's excellent in this movie. I thoroughly enjoy her performance. I think Daniel Kaluuya, this was like obviously his breakout performance. I understand he was in Black Mirror and whatnot, but this he's
Skins, hello, but anyway.
Okay, well, sorry. But I didn't know him from
OG.
that. But he was like, obviously, like he holds this whole movie together. Like if his performance was false and didn't hit as hard as it does, like this movie would not be nearly as successful. I love the music, a lot of the creativity at the horror on display, the sci-fi horror kind of bleeding together. I like a lot of it. So yeah, it's gonna be a slay from me. What I will say is I don't know if it's my favorite Jordan Peele movie, but it's a slay from me.
What is?
What about you, Rowan?
I mean, obviously, I can't not let this be a unanimous slay. I love this movie. I've loved this movie since I saw it in theaters. This is like, you know, I'm too young to like, you know, have seen, you know, John Carpenter, you know, get birthed with Halloween. And this is like, I feel like this is one I'll reflect back on and be like, you know, I got to be in the theater when I saw this guy's first movie, like this just like cinematic powerhouse of Jordan Peele. And yeah, I mean, everything everyone said, it's fantastic. Anything I thought didn't work, you know what? I'm not even that hard on it because I feel like in 2 more watches, I'll connect something else and then I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah. Like there's so much I'm still like picking apart at this. And it's just fantastic. Everything about it is fantastic. So, geez, 4 slays.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. I don't know if it's happened since Gill has joined the show, but we'll have to go back and take a look.
Yeah, I'll have to look. I don't think so. I think this is
I will
first.
say that this is potentially because you finally won Colton over Jill, the like most popular pick you've done yet.
Lol.
Wow.
Usually Jill picks are lopsided. Me and Jill versus everybody else.
It really is, though.
I mean, it's a real popular pick,
same thing
but
with the Mike pick, yeah.
Yeah, this is a movie that like I wouldn't go as far to call it like a masterpiece or something like that, but it's very rare that I watch a movie in theaters nowadays and then find that when I rewatch it I've been wrong, or that I'm like, oh, I've missed a lot here, that this is better. And it's not very much like something will hold up on 5 or 6 watches before I start to, you know, nitpick things or, you know, kind of get basically like, oh, I don't know if this works anymore, you know. If it holds up for 5 watches, it's probably a good movie, you know, probably a great movie.
So we told you what we thought about it, and we asked what you thought about it, and a couple people wrote in. So let me open up Facebook here. We had Heather Duncan write in, and they just said, okay. That's all they wrote. That's all right. I mean,
she was in my first viewing of the movie, I think. I think I remember her there.
There you go. We gave it a slay, but you know what? You know, not everything can be everyone's jam. So that's all right.
I would bet money that Heather is really into Us, which I'm glad you guys already covered on the show because I do not want to cover that movie.
Aww.
Well, I mean, we only ever covered it as a pre-Now Slain, a movie house horror.
No, really? I thought you guys did a full episode.
No, we never did a full episode on it, so it could come. It could come.
Oh God,
you may have spoke yourself into the grave there.
So then on X, Liam from Seen Unseen wrote, underrated component to Get Out is just how deeply silly it is and how aware of its own silliness it is. Always an absolute joy to watch. Instant slay.
Well, that's kind of like where you were saying, where it is like a Twilight Zone premise, right? Like a lot of those premises are naturally silly, but he treats it with respect and seriousness and elevates it with the social commentary that it, you know, it makes it a lot better.
And then lastly, we had Pedal Frog write in on Instagram, and they said 10 out of 10, no notes. So it seems like everybody is kind of on our page on this one. Not everybody, but that's all right. We need some variety in there. Now, before we get to the horrific hotline, we had a question come in for
no way. All right.
For the gang. So this is from a friend of the podcast, Cecily. Wrote a question in and said she had to private message us because she wanted to let us know that her question was too long to be submitted in the story. So
fair enough. Okay.
It's not even a long question.
So it's not, why haven't you reviewed House of Wax yet, is it?
No.
I was literally just thinking about that.
This one, I feel like I should have sent beforehand, but I only saw it like now. So she said, if you could spend a night in any fictional horror setting, which one would it be and why? That is a question to ponder.
For me, it's a Black Mirror episode. My favorite episode of Black Mirror is the episode called Playtest, where it's a video game simulation and it's like a haunted house. And I think that's a really cool concept because it's not real, but it is. And it's like stuck in a loop. And I think that's super scary and also really cool.
I'll go next. Mine is the Overlook Hotel, The Shining.
Of course.
Yeah, why it's creepy, it's huge. There's a lot of food I can eat there. I feel like I can just eat whatever
Canned
I want.
food.
Yeah, but that's all right. Canned peaches, like they had other stuff there. They had like chickens and stuff you can cook. But yeah, I think why not? I want to ride a big boy tricycle and I don't know, look at creepy old women, just bunnies blowing dudes and stuff. Yeah, that's my answer.
I want to say spend a night in the hereditary treehouse, you know? Just,
fuck no.
Of course, that's what I have to choose, A24 fanboy, you know?
I'm done. Goodbye.
Just one night, you know, with my sleeping bag, you know, up there.
What about the Swedish temple?
Decapitated heads.
No. Midsummer is mid. I don't want to stay in that temple.
No.
Although that would be a much better vacation
bear suit.
spot. That probably would be a better choice, Jill, until I get, you know, murdered or sacrificed.
I would light it on fire for you.
Maybe in hindsight. Next time Cecily asks this question, I'll choose that.
Mine is the Ballet Academy, the Tanz Academy. From Suspiria, the original.
Oh, what an answer. What an answer.
Obviously.
I should have thought of that. So there you go. I think we got a message, as always, to the horrific hotline. So let's shoot it over there and get to the horrific hotline.
I think Get Out is brilliant. I love the movie. When I first saw it in the cinema, I'd seen some of the trailers, so I knew kind of where it was going, or I think I had an idea where it was going, but it took a different route, so it really did something I did not expect the movie to do, going into the surgery aspect and this planting a different person into the body, so kind of this modern day slavery theme going on, but even without the political subtext, the movie is still very thrilling and very entertaining movie that offers a lot of great scenes, great conversations between the characters. I love the hypnosis scenes where the mother kind of uses her tea and the spoon to hypnotize the main character. I think all the actors are great, especially the entire family when they start turning into psychos, with a special focus on Rose. So Alison Williams, I think is her name, the actress, who does a perfect job of gaslighting Daniel Kaluuya's character in the beginning and then switching around. Daniel Kaluuya, by the way, also fantastic in the movie. Overall, I can't praise it enough. I really like it. I'll give it a slay. Though one thing I do have to say is I've seen the movie so many times by now that I think I do prefer Us and Nope by Jordan Peele by now, just because I haven't seen them as much, and they do then sometimes surprise me because I do forget certain themes that are coming up in those movies, which doesn't happen with Get Out anymore. But I think that's not a negative thing to say about a movie, that you've seen it so often that you know what is happening. So yeah, slay for me. I hope to hear similar things from you, and good pick.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what I found when I was watching the movie as well, that I knew it a lot better than I expected. I don't know if you guys have seen this like half a dozen times like I have, but it was very much as I was watching it, this was one of the ones where I was like, I don't know if I had to really rewatch this. I could still quote this and like pick out all the key moments easily without watching it again. But yeah, it's always a joy to rewatch.
It's still a fairly new movie.
For sure.
But it's been out long enough for you to see it like 3 times. But yeah.
And if you want to be like Nicholas and send us a message to make it on the Horrific Hotline, you can do so by just sending us an email at itslayespodcast@gmail.com or messaging us on any of our socials. Just, record your thoughts on the movie or question you have and send it on in, and we'll make sure that it makes the show. And if you're not doing so already, you can follow us at itslayespodcast. We're on all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Blue Sky. If there's a social media, we're probably there at itslayespodcast. If you want to support the show like our horror hounds Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, Carvey, and Dan, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Gill, and get episodes of this here main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayespodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, it's time. Any jams making it from this?
I mean,
Are they already on the playlist?
It's going to have to make it. And yeah, we'll have to add some more from it, maybe some of that score. But yeah, go to Spotify and go to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton mentioned beforehand. Go to the link tree in the bio. Click on it, it'll take you there. We upload scores or licensed music from horror movies we review or horror movies we love or just iconic horror movies. So, yeah, go to the playlist, get your spooky music on, because you can get it on all year. And I think all that is left is to announce the next episode. Colton, it is your pick.
Yeah, so as I said at the beginning of this episode, before we were recording, I don't know what I'm picking really, but as we've been recording, I've been taking a look around. For whatever reason, I was feeling a ghost movie. So I was taking a look around, seeing what ghost movies that are not discussed often enough. And I think I'm going to go with Ty West's The Innkeepers. Everyone knows him from X. Everyone knows him from Pearl and, maybe The House of the Devil back in the day. But I figured, let's check out The Innkeepers and see what we have to say about it.
Nice. Innkeepers. Sorry, I won't say whether or not I've seen that. So I think that is everything. So make sure to get your eyeballs on The Innkeepers for the next episode. And thank you for all the support. As always, I am your humble host, Rowan.
I'm Colton.
Mike already left, but bye, it's Jill.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
But the prime time gets.
Monmouth and a Fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotape.